Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the Gospel of Cleasy. This is your boy D Freezy, aka Cleasy for Sheezy. I hope you guys are doing okay tonight. I was trying to uh, catch the end of the Cowboys versus the Baltimore Ravens. Looked like the Ravens were gonna pull it out. So, Dallas Cowboy fans, here we are again. But this is not a sports podcast. I leave that to the professionals. Just thinking about some things I saw over the past week. Um, Cameron Mace had Mike Tyson on. Great, great show. Great interview. Mike Tyson is bananas. He is our champion. In more way for more reasons than just boxing. He done been through a lot. He came from a hard story, or what have you. But yeah, shout out to them. Just while I was thinking about it, if you can see my screen, I'm sure you can guess what the next topic is going to be about. Um, the the Diddy episode. This is not the Diddy episode. This episode is called New York. Are you out there? And I'll explain why I named it that. For a reason, and it'll tie back into what I just talked about. But yeah, this week, Sean P Diddy Combs, brother Love, yikes, was arrested and charged with a number of things. I have not to date read the charges and everything he's been charged with, but my understanding is um, it doesn't look good. And of course, the rumblings on the internet um, already are, you know, a list, a Epstein type list, and there may be a Epstein type list. I think some of the chatter I've heard said that there is video recordings of people um, without their knowledge, which is super grimy. But I just want to say, um, in my opinion, I'm not gonna. I heard some people saying, um, "Don't gloat over the downfall of a man," but I get that, and I don't. But in this particular case, this is something. This has been an unknown known in the black community and the black entertainment community, but the general community at large. For a long time now. There's been um, rumors of how he treats his artists. There's been conjecture and suspicion around people around him meeting untimely demises. Um, one of those being the Notorious B.I.G., who is one of my favorite hip hop artists of all time. So, you know, everybody's got their heroes. Big is a hip hop hero to me. Cut, his life was cut too short, and the things that took place that I know of, that I've read, that took place around him uh, being, his life being taken in Los Angeles. Um, when it was, leave me with a lot of questions. There is a movie called City of Lies, starring Johnny Depp and Forrest Whitaker. Miss Valletta Wallace, Notorious B.I.G.'s mother, makes an appearance in that movie. That should tell you a lot. Um, and it basically lays out what happened with Biggie Smalls' murder. Not that Diddy had any direct involvement in it, but you know, I just got one question. I don't really care about all the other stuff that they did. Well, I do care, and if people were harmed, and we know from video that at least some people were harmed. We saw it with our own eyes, by his hand directly. Um, but outside of all of that, I just have one question. I just have one question, and if I can get the answer to that question, I wouldn't say another word about Sean Combs. My question is, why did his truck blow the light at Wilshire by the Peterson Automotive Museum where the party was, and Biggs didn't? That's the only question I got. Um, it's the only question I got. So, outside of what was done to whom, and whether some or all of it was consensual, or it's been so. I haven't really looked at it because I don't really care about the gaudy details, what have you. If it's read into the court record, and reported by a reputable source, that's enough for me. I don't need to go too deep into it. Um, but yeah, so Diddy is, he tried to post $50 million bail. They denied it. It's a bad look. And they don't want to take your, well, they don't want $50 million from you. That tells me you have done some things that are outside of what can be, what you can buy your way out of, I guess, is the best way to put that. So yeah, so Diddy, um my heart goes, I saw LL Cool J make a comment, and shout out to LL. He's a class act, a legend, whatever kind of accolade you want to put on him. He said that he felt for his children, for the Sean Puffy Combs' children. And I saw something that said, um, the most heartbreaking thing was to see one of his sons reading what he had been charged with, and that's So I would never discount the the effects it's having on his loved ones and family. And that's not funny. That's not funny. But there are some things that he needs to be held accountable for. If the things that they're saying, um, if he's done anything illegal, he needs to be held accountable for it. So, um, okay, I'm back. I guess. I lost you guys for a minute there. So, but yeah, I would never make light of the effects it's having on the family of Diddy. Uh, and prayers go out to them, because they didn't do it, and they didn't ask for um, the level of criticism and scrutiny that they're going to get because of what's happened. So, without going on about that, it's you know it just needs to be held accountable, and nobody is above the law. And I'm race first, in the words of Marcus Garvey. I'm down for the cause. I'm for anybody. I want to see anybody, you know, from my tribe, from my race, however you want to frame it. I want to see anybody succeed. But when you take that success and you use the power, they say absolute power control corrupts absolutely. Um, you have to be careful when you have so much wealth that you can do pretty much anything that comes to your mind. Sometimes I guess you could get bored, and you just have to do things so that you can keep pushing the envelope or whatever. But I've never been um, extravagantly wealthy, so I don't know. But that's just my perspective on it. So what so wanted to talk about Diddy. Also in the news, um, is Lieutenant Governor of the state of North Carolina, Mr. Mark Robinson, who is, I guess, is on kind of the same wave that Diddy's on. He There was a CNN story that broke this week that said he was in, you know, adult chat rooms and saying all kinds of wild stuff. Some of it is like the Black Nazi. Um, he called himself the Black Nazi. He said something like slavery. He. Some people needed to be slaves, or slavery was good, or something wild. He's always saying something wild. And the ads are wild on both sides. I'm not gonna it's that season, and that's the kind of politics we've become accustomed to. But you know, the ads about him in the daycare and all that kind of stuff. Um, you know, what I don't understand is how you can come out and make a this. So these are the type of black people that I have a problem with. And there are some black people that I do have a problem with, and it's because they will enrich themselves at the benefit. Um, they will enrich themselves at the expense of the rest of their people. They will use the masses of the people, as Stokely Carmichael would say, to get to that position, and then take their position and use it against the masses of the people. If that makes sense. Shout out to Kwame Ture, also known as Stokely Carmichael. Um, I posted something this week. I was listening to a podcast. I think it's called Code Switch on NPR. Yeah, it's on NPR. And they talk about racial issues. They do a fairly decent job most of the time. And they give you some context that, you know, is not widely taught. I'll put it that way. And they were talking about um, anti-Semitism, and no, they weren't talking about anti-Semitism. I take that back. Yeah, I don't want to get flagged. They were talking about the civil rights movement's connection to the Palestinian struggle, and they talked about a letter that written by, or put a newsletter put out by SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. When I said Stokely's name, Kwame Ture's name, that made me think about it, and it caused a split in SNCC, and it was in 1967, I believe. If you are interested, hit me up, or I might put the link in the chat if I can find it. If I can do more than one thing at a time, which is sometimes a challenge for me. And you know, we've gotten away from that. Everybody is siloed now, and that is part of the reason we are not as far along as we would be, because when I say we, I'm talking about uh, Nubians across the diaspora. When I say Nubians, I started calling African Americans, people of African descent, Nubians, because uh, some brothers in the community, in the conscious community, have an issue with us calling ourselves black, and they say, you know, it's around the law and what you refer to yourself as. Um, I don't know that these brothers are right or wrong, but just to appease them, I said Nubians, because they, generally you want a name that most people's name, when it comes to a racial group, ties them back to a specific region. And Nubia was a place. It still is a place. It's just called something different now. So if you want to know where Nubia is or was, just go on Google Maps and type in Nubia and see where it takes you. It'll take you right where it should. Google Earth is smart. So when I say Nubians, I mean black people here and across the diaspora, but our brothers and sisters in Brazil, our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean, our brothers and sisters in South America, Mexico, our brothers and sisters in Australia, our brothers and sisters in Europe, our brothers and sisters in any part of the world that you might find us, because the way you know is you look at them and they look like you or somebody in your family. Genes are smart. Genes are you can't go wrong with genetics. We see babies that are born that look just like their granddaddy, and they never met each other. So the genes don't lie. When I went to Jamaica, I saw a lot of people that I thought I was like, oh, that's oh, until they started speaking, and then I was like, oh, this. But yeah, and we here in America around the subject of reparations, and I've been talking about that a lot this week. I'll talk some more about that. Um, we have some people here have attempted to take that topic and cause it to create a division in the diaspora. And on the top, this is my position on the topic of reparations for descendants of African slaves in this country. That applies to descendants of people who were slaves in this country. So if your descendants weren't, if your ancestors weren't slaves of this country, then the subject of reparations against this government would not apply to you. Now, it stands to reason that wherever you come from, you have either been oppressed by a Western power or you've been colonized by a Western power. And that, whoever that is who your claim for reparations should be against, because I guarantee you there are some similarities in what was done to you, whether you were colonized or kidnapped and relocated. There's some similarities in the methods used, and there's some similarities in the effects. So when we go to these different government bodies, yeah, we will not be um, able to be unified in a Pan-African way. That's going to have to be nation by nation, unless we go to the United Nations, which is dangerous if you know the history around Malcolm X and what he was trying to do with Muslim Mosque Inc. and you know addressing some world leaders in Africa and talking about going on to do that. Some say that's a part of the reason he had to go. I would challenge you to go and look at the evidence and come up with your own conclusion. So, but the topic of reparations shouldn't cause us to be against our brothers and sisters across the diaspora. And I'll say that here in Durham, there are a great number of Native Africans that either immigrated here or their parents did, and there there's some division that I hear, because I know people who work around them and with them, and they Black Americans sense a resistance or a division within them. But I say that, and that's a real world example. But at the same time, I learned that there's a Pan African Congress conference going on in Togo, and it's people from the Americas, people from the Caribbean, people from all over the diaspora coming together to talk about Pan Africanism and reparations and restitution on a global level. So I'm trying to reconcile the fact that there may be division on both sides with the fact that we need to unite. If we unite, then we're probably second in population only to the Chinese. And I don't even know if we'd be second to them. If you talk about all the people of African descent in the places I named, if we would all operate with one goal, or the same political goals, I won't say one goal because it'll be more than one, I'm sure. The same political goals, I would be excited to see what we could accomplish as a people. But we can't get there if well, I'm Dominican, I'm not Black, and you know, I can't I can't blame the people of the diaspora for coming here and not wanting to be called black, because like it's well known across the world that that's probably the bottom of the totem pole as far as the racial caste system or hierarchy goes. Nobody, I mean, who wants to go in and be on the bottom? You know, but what I would challenge, anybody anywhere in the diaspora to do is try to, and okay, am I back? I don't know. I think I'm having connectivity problems tonight. I apologize. You know, uh, technical difficulties. Please stand by. So what was I saying? But yeah, so Africa Unite. Bob Marley said it best. Um, yeah. So politically, I think I talked about the last apparent attempt. I think I talked about that. That happened before the last um apparent assassination attempt on the former president. I think I talked about that on the last show. I Only thing I say is, man, it's a lot of attempts. Like the most attempts. That's, I mean, one on the same uh official is unordinary. More than one, it's like wow. And then I think what the Goofy said was, the hateful rhetoric from the other side was what was causing it. And that's, man, whose rhetoric is more hateful and vile and disgusting than his? That's whatever, bro. And that's all I really say about that. Not too much on the presidential uh election other than it. I'm trying to think. Was the debate? Yeah, the debate was last week, man. I can't keep up with the time. But so I said that the title of this episode is New York is out there. So I was talking earlier at the beginning of the show about Mike Tyson being on Cameron and Mace. It is what it is. Shout out to them. I think it's probably the best. It's it's my favorite. I don't watch. Somebody told me. I think my son might have said Chad and Shannon have a great one too. I might try to start checking that out. But they had Mike Tyson on, and they got around to politics, which was kind of unusual. They don't usually talk about politics. And um, Mike said he was for Trump because he knows Trump, and he fought in his hotel when he was first starting out. Mace said he was going to vote for Trump because he's a conservative, and Cameron said he don't vote. Stat wouldn't weigh in. And so New York is near and dear to my heart. I've loved New York ever since I learned about New York. I mean, it's a cool city. I've been a few times. Every time I go, it's like I'm amazed by so much can be crammed into such a small, you know, geographic area. It's small, relatively small, but it's a lot. It's like the city that never sleeps for real. I was born upstate New York, Poughkeepsie. Shout out to PK, Dutchess County. Um, Shout out to my family there. I still got a family there. So I thought, and I know that in the '90s, and when I was a young man, Trump was in every rap song. It's a song called Black Trump by, is it a song called Black Trump by UGK? I can't think of who got it. Anyway, Trump, Raekwon, I know Raekwon Shell mentions Trump. Um, I'm pretty sure, no, I know UGK mentions Trump in Pocket Full of Stones. And the list goes on and on. He's referenced in a lot of hip hop songs, and we really messed with Trump prior to the presidential campaign of Barack Obama. Um, but also before social media became a thing, the Central Park Five case happened, and Trump was adamantly against those brothers. They subsequently were exonerated, found guilty, not guilty of anything, after they had been railroaded by the New York Police Department and the prosecutor's office. Um, Everybody did those guys wrong, and shout out to them. Santana Raymond, I follow him on social media. Uh, I think he's a cool. I think all of them dudes are cool, and I got a lot of respect for them. I got a T-shirt. I try to show my support for them because they're just one example of what happens to people who look like us every day. But it's a clear example, and they didn't deserve what happened to them. So shout out to the exonerated five. But when Trump started with the birther stuff with Barack Obama, which in my opinion was blatant racism, I felt like it was obvious what was driving him. It was obvious what dog whistle he was using to, I guess, put himself in position to run, because that's what he did. And I've heard people say, and I can't remember who I heard say it first, but so there was a White House correspondence dinner that Donald Trump attended, and Barack Obama roasted him. And I would play it, but I'm pretty sure it would get flagged, and the whole video would have to be taken down. But he ethered Donald Trump, and a lot of people say that's when Donald Trump decided to run for president. And I think, as petty as he is, it's probably true. Excuse me, but when he started with the birther stuff, and he's not born here, and he's different, and attacking President Obama in ways that I hadn't seen other candidates attack, and it being adopted by a large segment of the population. I thought that most black people would take that as, well, if he feels that way about them, he feels that way about me. But there's a segment of the population, and so I follow another person. I follow a few people from New York. Like I said, I love New York, and I especially love black people from New York. They just so in your face, and just the attitude, and and the way they carry themselves. Um, it's another person I follow. I won't say their name because I don't want those. I say Cam Mason name because I know they ain't gonna never see it, and I'm not disparaging them. I'm just saying what they said. But um, but she, is apparently for Trump. So I'm trying to figure out. But Trump did some shady stuff with real estate in New York City around race, the people he didn't want to rent to, and basically restrictive home covenants, or basically the same thing. Housing discrimination at the end of the day. And, you know, I would think the people in the city were aware of that and wouldn't mess with him, but it seems like a lot of black people in New York do. So I just want to know, yeah, is it just because he a New York guy, or you know, I mean, what is it? What is it? And I know y'all ain't thinking it's gonna be another PPP, but if it is, just say that and I'll let it go. So that's why I titled it New York. Are you out there? Because black people in New York, when I say black people, I mean the Puerto Ricans too, because y'all basically we eat the same. And Jamaicans and Haitians and uh, you know, Palestinian people, whoever. Whoever's in New York, that's as Dr. Neely Fuller would say, it's three classifications: white supremacists, white, and non-white. So if you're non-white, You messing with Trump like that, and if so, why? You know, I would love to talk to somebody who can tell me why. And and let me say this. Let me make a disclaimer. This is not a this is trying to be careful because people could take things the wrong way. This is not an endorsement of anybody, but like I said, just explain to me why you would why that's your choice in a way that I can understand. So yeah, New York, let me know something, man. Y'all holler at me and tell me, you know, why he's your guy or what have you. So yeah, the other thing that's been coming up a lot this week is locally is reparations, and we are going to ask some questions to some people who we would like answers from. And we've asked already. When we just need to follow up now. So um, interesting that I was in a community meeting this past Saturday. It's been a busy weekend. That's why I'm not more prepared tonight. I apologize. Um, and I was in a meeting with an elected official, and we were talking about uh, things to curb gentrification, displacing people people of African descent from their homes because they of taxes and uh, property values and things of that nature. Basically, economics shifting on people who live in an area that once was not of high value that now is because of changes in the economic landscape. That's basically what gentrification is. And we started talking about reparations. I asked about reparations and, you know, basically got indirect answer, indirect response, I'll say, but did get some, um, you know, get some things to follow up on, but that's going to be a topic for us here in Durham, and you know, because oh, this is the thing, and then a gentleman came up to me and told me that he was on my side until I went down the racial rabbit hole, right? And you know, I gave him, you know, a response that let him know that, you know, I won't accept any kind of terminology from anybody of the dominant society that tries to minimize my concerns. I don't see where other marginalized groups or non-marginalized. I don't see where other groups, um, you know, you know, their concerns are discounted. Only when it is the subject of reparations or restitution for the economic and political damage done to people who are the descendants of African slaves in this country is it an issue. If it's the farmers, it's no issue. If it's the homeless, it's no issue. If it's um, other marginalized ethnic groups, it's no issue. If it's um, pickleball courts, it's no issue. If it's dog parks, it's no issue. If it's more trees, it's no issue. Only when it's the subject of reparations, economic and political. Well, the economic and political go together. So I always say them together. Repair of damage that has been done, is it an issue? Does it evoke a response of the type that I get when the subject of reparations comes up? And I think it's because people don't understand. They think it was only slavery, and I submit it was it was almost as much happened after slavery. especially between 1865 and 1965, as happened during slavery to black people. The only thing that was different was we were not technically property of another person in most cases, but there are some cases where there were people being held as property into the 20th century. Um, there's a movie called Alice with it's not Tiana Taylor, it's Kiki. What is her name? Kiki. I can't remember her name. Akilah and the Bee. Anyway, I think she was in Akilah and the Bee. Anyway, but yeah. So I just want to talk about some of that and just give you a little bit of background on why I say that. So I think I did Cleese's Classroom. It's not gonna be Cleese's Classroom tonight. This is just gonna be Cleese's Cliff Notes. So let's talk about 1865. 1865 is the end of the Civil War and uh, emancipation for people who were formerly slaves. So in 1865, uh, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, called the um, Reconstruction Amendments, made black people free, gave them rights as citizens, and I think it gave, I can't remember what, 13, 14, 15. Anyway, look them up. They'll tell you what they did. Anyway, those were basically the amendments to the Constitution that freed black people. So in 1865, as soon as the Reconstruction policies were being implemented in places like, hang on, yeah, in places like Mississippi and South Carolina. South Carolina was the last state to come back to the Union, right? So they started these things called the Black Codes, and they were laws that required black people to have paperwork if they were in certain places, and show that they were working. And if they weren't working, they were subject to arrest. So, um, so just think about it. You were released from slavery with nothing. We never got the 40 acres and a mule. I'll talk about that on a podcast at a later time. Um, yeah, so we were free with basically nothing, which meant most, or if not all, had to go back to working on the farms that they were just freed from as sharecroppers and as servants in the homes of these wealthy people. Um, and if you couldn't get a job there, and you had to have paperwork showing that you were working somewhere, and uh, if you couldn't come up with that, they locked you up. And um, there's a great documentary on PBS. I know I keep saying PBS. Y'all probably hang on, I'm gonna show you. It's a book called Slavery by Another Name, and it is written by, hang on, Douglas A. Blackman. Um, but yeah, Slavery by Another Name. It talks about debt slavery and peonage. Peonage was um, basically you being locked up, the prison that you're locked up in hiring you out as labor and keeping the money. That's what peonage was. Um, and debt slavery, you owed somebody money, so you had to be basically enslaved to them until you paid it off. And then in many cases, the sharecroppers were paid with in conscription, which was can't talk. Conscription was money, not real money, money that you could only use at the sharecropper store. So they paid you with money, and then you gave the money back to them, and you couldn't spend it nowhere with anyone else but them. But that wasn't technically slavery because you were getting some fake money. So that started um right after the Civil War ended. They started the Black Codes, stuff like that. So they started locking black people up. And I challenge you to go back and look at um I challenge you to go back and look at the number of black prisoners that um how the numbers went up after slavery ended. So, we went from slaves to inmates. And Khalid Gibran, Ka- the book is called Condemnation of Blackness. Hang on, I'm gonna tell you his name. I'm lacking tonight. Khalil Gibran Muhammad. Yeah, Khalil Gibran Muhammad. It talks about that that marked the time when black people began to be looked at as criminals. They started they started this practice, and then they started in the media publishing the statistics for the number of black people that were messed up uh to give the public the perception of the black person as a criminal. So, Condemnation of Blackness by um, Khalil Gibran Muhammad. Read that. Read that. So, so the black codes started, right. Then debt, slavery, and peonage started. Then after the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment were uh, were passed or signed, excuse me, um, you know, immediately the southern states started passing laws to um, soften the blow of, soften retribution or whatever the retaliation from the newly freed slaves. They were afraid, partly, so they started doing things using the law to protect themselves. You know what I mean? They limited the amount of weapons or ammunition we could have, things of that nature. It was just another form. But black people started to gain political power because we could vote and we could run for office, and so you know there started to become black people as elected officials, which gave us some protection. It gave us protection up until 1877. So we're talking about 1865 to 1877. What's that? 12 years. 12 years. Even now, racism wasn't absent because remember, the black code started as soon as the Civil War ended, but we were able to achieve some rights, some political power, some wealth. There were black towns started to pop up, and then in 1877, the presidential race between uh, Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel Tilden, they couldn't figure out who won, so they did something called referred to as the Great Compromise or the Hayes Tilden Compromise. And one of the things they did, they it was two or three things they did, and I can't remember right off the top of my head. One of them was they would not, the federal government would not intervene in the way the southern states went about dealing with their Negroes. The other thing they did was they removed the Union troops from the South, which were giving protection to the newly freed slaves and their offspring. And this is when the Ku Klux Klan went into high gear, because they didn't have to worry about going up against the federal government when they tried to terrorize black people. And that was basically the end of Reconstruction. So we were freed in 1865. We had 12 years of relative uh, rights. Then 1877, we go back into what I would refer to as a second slavery. Then they codified it in the slaughterhouse cases, which was 1872, and basically you can look them up. They're called the slaughterhouse cases. They were around a group of butchers in the state of Louisiana, and they had a case about competition. It was business related, but basically what the slaughter cases did was they ruled that the privileges and immunities clause of the 14th Amendment protected only protect individuals' rights only at the federal level and did not extend to the rights granted by the individual states. This is where you hear the term states' rights. That's where it comes from. So, the federal government can't tell the states what to do in dealing with their citizens. So they codified, and then in uh 1896, you got Plessy versus Ferguson, which basically made us a separate and distinct class of peoples. So when people say separate but equal, right? So they basically said the segregation laws didn't violate the Constitution. After they freed us in 1865. In 1896, they said we're free, but we're not the same. So and as long as everything is equal, which it never was, that's the other thing. It was separate and unequal, but they said separate but equal. Then that was fine. The government and businesses could discriminate. They could have black and white this and black and white bathrooms and all of that. So that was 1896, and we didn't get relief from that until 1964, 65. So 1865 to 1965 is 100 years. And then you turn around and say, well, it was so long ago. My mother was born in 54. We didn't get, like Chris Rock said, y'all didn't start acting right until 1965, and that's depending on where you were. But Brown versus the Board of Education was in the 50s. That's the other thing. And you didn't integrate the schools until the 70s because my mama was the second integrated class to graduate. So I know I'm it's not that far away if it's my parents. And then let's talk about her parents and her grandparents. What was it like then? You know what I'm saying? So um it's not only about slavery, and what it all boiled down to was artificial um artificially keeping us from being able to compete in this economy. Because with you know I was talking to brother Minister Paul Scott on his podcast or his live, and you know the religious one religion says the love of money is the root of all evil, but in reality we operate under a capitalist system in a capitalistic society that runs on money, and there's nothing else in this society that gives you the protection that money gives you. As one of my mentors said, if you ain't got money, I don't know what you can get to take its place. And so money is necessary. Money offers you protection from people who want to do things that that affect you, and you don't necessarily want them to do it without you having to resort to violence. You can hire a lawyer and take them to court. You can move. You can, somebody wants to move in next door to you and you don't want them to, you can buy that lot too. It's things like that. And with um Supreme Court rulings like Citizens United, um, which basically said that, the federal government was for sale to the highest bidder, and you don't know where the money's coming from, and you can give any candidate as much money as you want to, and you don't have to tell they don't have to tell where it came from. Um, you have to have money to have political power. So, um, and we're talking about uncompensated labor and unfair um, business practices that artificially kept us in a separate and distinct lower class. And we're not the people that I talk to about reparations and the people that I work with are not talking about taking retaliating against anybody. We're talking about being able to build legacies for our families and pass on things to our uh, descendants in the way that other people, other groups do. That's all we want to do. We want to have some. We want to have something to pass on so that the generations that come after us don't have to go through the same things. That's what any parent or uh, family wants to do. There's so much of the law in this country around property rights and inheritance. You know, there's always great debate around the inheritance tax. Well, most black people don't have to worry about the inheritance tax, and that's just being honest. And that's not a coincidence, and it's not largely due to anything we've done um, other than our ancestors being kidnapped and brought here and worked for free, you know. So if you want to talk about inheritance, the inheritance of black people is uncompensated labor and unfair business practices that kept us from accumulating wealth in the way other citizens of this country would and have. And if that's wrong, um, I don't want to be right. Brother Paul said people should read The Betrayal of the Negro by Logan. Is it just Logan, Brother Paul? I'm just seeing this. But yeah, and we shouldn't be ashamed to say um that we're owed that. And we are owed it. Let's be clear. Um, I was talking to an elder and I said, they try to make us ashamed when we say that. Is it just about money? And my answer is yes. It ain't. I mean, it doesn't have to be just in the form of money, but it's about wealth, which any way you break it down equates to money. It ain't got to be. It doesn't have to all be a check in my hand, but it does have to be something that's going to put me in a better economic situation that I'm in, and not something that I'm already guaranteed but as a citizen. Something that I'm guaranteed as a citizen, and because of what has been done to place by the federal, state, and local government to put me and people who look like me in the situation we're in as a group. And I can't be more clear than that. Rayford Logan, Brother Paul said. Thank you, Brother Paul. Peace. But I was telling the elder, they try to make us ashamed. And I say, when they give it to poor people, they call it welfare. When they give it to wealthy people, they call it a subsidy. And what is the difference? The difference is what you call it. So if you don't have any problem giving people who don't need it subsidies, why do you have a problem giving people who need it and who have been wronged and things have been done specifically to put them in the situation? I say all the time, if policy created the situation, policy can undo the situation it created. But my general opinion is people don't have a problem with that idea because the government gives money to all kinds of different things that we don't even know about and we don't care about. It's only when it's going to benefit black people specifically and directly and only because black people should we've been given everything. That's what I'm told. And I don't know when it was, but I must not have been alive because I didn't get it. But I'll take it. If you can tell me who to call and get it, I'll call them tomorrow at 8 p.m., 8 a.m. I'm sorry. Yeah. And I'm not ashamed because, I'm not trying to go buy a cyber truck. I'm trying to build a legacy. I'm trying to build a legacy. I'm trying to help my people who are called by my name. Uh-oh. I'm about to take out a church. No, I'm just playing. All right, that's enough for tonight. I rambled on. But yeah, Gospel Ecclesi. I'm gonna work on getting a guest. No, I feel like I'm talking to myself. And I don't know if y'all, uh, Brother Paul is peace to you, but I don't know if y'all want to hear me talk. But anyway, enough about that. Peace and blessings. Have a great week. Ecclesi out.